Hi guys and welcome back to One on One, the show where we go off the beaten track to explore a different side of football. In this episode we'll be discussing the current state of mental health in the sport, addressing where the game has progressed and where there's still huge room for improvement. As conscientious fans, it's important that we educate ourselves on the fundamentals, so we're well equipped to challenge outdated attitudes and support those who open up about their struggles. We're not looking for a solution here, just to better understand the current playing field and to question if the industry should be doing more. Our focus will mainly be on British football, as players whose stories we're recounting and the data we've collated are specific to these shores. However, this is a truly universal topic, so any light you can shed on attitudes towards mental health in different leagues would be extremely welcome in the comments below. The hard numbers. According to the charity Mind, 1 in 4 people in the UK will struggle with their mental health in some capacity every single year. In football, the numbers are becoming even more pronounced, as the latest figures from the Professional Football Association and FIFA Pro, the World Players Union, really hammer home. Of the 826 players who took part in the latest FIFA Pro study, 38% of active players and 35% of ex-players said they suffered with mental health problems, and the numbers are rising year on year. In the first 6 months of 2019, roughly 355 professionals accessed therapy through the PFA, more than double the amount that sought help over the entirety of 2016. Of those questioned, over half played at the highest level for their country. This isn't a problem confined to the lower reaches of the game, this is happening in the financial promised lands of top-flight football. And if football isn't doing enough at the tip of the pyramid, what does that mean for the lower rungs, reserve teams and youth setups? An extremely disconcerting proposition that we'll touch upon later. Put simply, up to 4 of the starting 11 that line up for your club could be struggling with mental health issues. The problem only escalates when a footballer retires too, with FIFA Pro stating that a player is 40% more likely to experience depression at this juncture of their career, a scenario the industry should be ashamed of given its resources. There's also a strong chance that this mindset contributes to other problematic areas for retirees too, with 2 of every 5 players filing for bankruptcy within 5 years of hanging up their boots, and over a third getting divorced just 12 months after their final game. It all makes for very bleak reading. Fitness, or the ability to carry out the job, is also a key trigger for mental health issues amongst professionals, with players who have suffered 3 or more severe injuries 4 times more likely to report problems with their mental health. So, problematic areas have been identified, but is enough being done to combat them? Money over well-being. In the summer of 2018, the 20 Premier League clubs spent $1.24 billion on transfers and received a collective $2.4 billion in TV revenue, about 2% of the NHS's entire budget for 15-16. But while transfer revenue and records keep tumbling, is the human cost being neglected? At the start of the 18-19 campaign, Peter Lowe, former head of education at Manchester City, now director of PlayersNet, an independent not-for-profit welfare service, said that football is still nowhere near proactive enough when it comes to mental health, despite the glut of resources. And this seems to be the crux of the issue. Progress is being made, but not enough. Football is simply not maintaining pace with the demand. Between 2012 and 2017, the number of counsellors at English clubs rose from a paltry 28 to 92. This is a considerable improvement, but the PFA has over 4,000 members alone, and this doesn't include players who are yet to sign professional contracts, typically those 17 years old and younger. There have also been some high-profile incidents in the past 2 years alone that lend weight to Lowe's statements, including reports of bullying at Premier League academies and former Everton winger Aaron Lennon's unfortunate detainment under the Mental Health Act. The feeling that clubs could and should be doing more to protect their players' mental well-being has also been echoed by Michael Bennett, the PFA's Director of Player Welfare. In 2017, he went on record to say, "For me, personally, the PFA are leading the way. But you want then to get clubs to buy into the process as well, they've got a duty of care to their players." So why haven't clubs committed to resolving these issues? Is the industry learning sufficiently from the past? To better understand these questions, we need to ascertain a sense of what came before, and thanks to some extremely brave and forthright players, we can now piece together a much clearer picture of how football has dealt with mental health in the modern era. Before we move on, if anyone is struggling for an outlet regarding their mental health, then Calm run a free and confidential helpline and web chat service 7 hours a day, 7 days a week. A link will be put in the description below. When I spoke to friends and family about my panic attacks, they became much easier to process and manage. And as the stats show, you are not alone, not by a long shot. And a problem shared really is a problem halved. Back to football. Performance over progress. Now there has been watershed moments. like the death of Premier League legend Gary Speed, which according to Bennett led to more openness from players when it came to admitting their issues. However, there's still a prevailing sense that it demonstrates a weakness of some kind, a weakness which isn't welcome in the cutthroat world of competitive sport. As a result, it would appear that players feel compelled to bury their feelings as a means of self-preservation, which can have devastating consequences further down the line. Ex-Burnley defender Clark Carlisle has spoken at length about his struggles with mental health. When he was 21, he tried to take his life in a park by overdosing on painkillers. He'd just suffered an injury and convinced himself that if he couldn't play football, he was of no value to anyone. His identity was so intrinsically linked with football that without it, he felt worthless. Carlisle didn't confide in his club, fearing it would compromise his position, instead suppressing the emotions, which would go on to manifest into further attempts on his life, including stepping in front of a lorry aged 34. Reflecting on this period of his life in an interview with Vice, Carlisle insisted that there needs to be greater involvement from clubs to avoid more cases like his. He goes on to say, "They are the employers, and it seems really bizarre that they don't have a duty of care to their employees, and the onus rests with the union. That doesn't happen in any other industry." Former Premier League star Stephen Colker's story shares alarming similarities with Carlisle's, and he's 12 years his junior and still active in the game. The defender, who now plies his trade in Turkey, told The Guardian that during the 2015-16 season at Southampton, his mental state rapidly deteriorated, and when he tried to articulate his feelings to others, they gave him throwaway advice such as express yourself on the pitch. More troublingly, he also details conversations with other professional footballers where they openly refuse to seek help from the likes of Sporting Chance Clinic because, in their words, they know if they take the time off, they'll lose their place in the team. An even darker evolution of this attitude is evident in former Burnley and Watford player Marvin Sordell's story, where he's all but told by a club not to seek help as it would mean he couldn't help them out competitively. In an interview with The Guardian, Sordell said, "Without naming names, at one of my clubs I was also seeing a doctor. She recommended I go to the Priory to recover properly." Now, the Priory is a provider of mental health facilities with over 7,000 beds in the UK. He continued, "I didn't end up doing so. I wasn't sure how they would react to me needing to go to the Priory. And then, not long after, my mum phoned. She said someone from the club had called. They told her I was thinking of going to the Priory, but the message was clear. You can't do that. You must focus on football. I don't know how they knew. I was shocked." Why should players have to choose between their profession and getting help? Surely there needs to be more of an onus on clubs to take care of their players in-house, addressing the issues at source before they spiral out of control. Germany, for example, have put impressive measures in place following the suicide of international Robert Enke. Every professional club has access to psychiatric treatment, and there is also a 24-hour hotline for players who think they might be suffering from depression, something which has recently become available in the UK, much to the PFA's credit. Rugby is also trumping football clubs' current efforts. Each top-flight club has a player development manager who helps the playing staff with every aspect of life outside the sport, and there's also courses on personal resilience and a 24-hour helpline. In cricket, they've been even more imaginative in an attempt to get through to their players, putting on a play in 2016 about former England batsman Colin Milburn, who died of alcoholism following retirement, touring all 18 first-class cricket grounds. Speaking out. The number of big names that have come out in recent years are helping facilitate change by keeping the topic in the public consciousness. Players such as Gianluigi Buffon, Andres Iniesta, Michael Carrick and Aaron Lennon have all spoken at length about how their mental health impacted their ability to function both on and off the pitch. Sadly, not all of these high-profile stories have elicited a positive reaction. Take England international Danny Rose, who admirably came out to discuss his struggles just days before the 2018 World Cup. The Tottenham left-back spoke candidly about how a succession of events led to a downward spiral in his mental well-being. First, he sustained a long-term injury that kept him sidelined for 9 months. Shortly after, his uncle tragically killed himself, his mum was then racially abused, and finally, his brother was shot at in his family home. This extraordinary sequence of events would no doubt shake any individual to their core, and it left Rose, albeit for a short spell, on medication. Instead of being met with understanding and sympathy in the ensuing months, potential suitors categorised Rose as a risk owing to his mental state. One unnamed club even said they wanted to meet him just to check he wasn't crazy. Rose said it left him feeling embarrassed and that he'd never consider an offer from that club again, and rightly so. If football doesn't set a strong precedent at the top, conducting itself accordingly, what chance do players stand outside the land of milk and honey? The following story gives us a glimpse of what having mental health issues can manifest into at the bottom of the ladder when struggling young pros are tossed on football's scrap heap. David Cox. Former Kilmarnock and Peterhead forward David Cox has been taunted about his mental health by rival fans throughout his career after he confessed he tried to commit suicide, with one despicable individual telling him to go and hang himself and do it right this time. By his own admission, Cox has struggled with his demons since his early teens, self-harming before finding temporary respite in Kilmarnock's academy. When he was released as a 19-year-old, it coincided with a relationship breaking down, which subsequently led to 2 overdoses. Only after the second attempt at his life was David offered access to psychiatric nurses, and in his own words, he felt like they didn't give it. David was eventually institutionalised, where he credits his sister with stopping him trying to hang himself. He was in the darkest of places. Intervention by his Peterhead manager Jim McAnally, who took him into his home, led to his condition improving, and despite relapsing since, Cox has said that he feels more emboldened than ever when it comes to managing his condition, crediting the help of a few kind individuals, not the system that spat him out. David's story shows how precarious having mental health issues can be as a struggling young player. It also shows that there needs to be a stronger element of self-policing amongst fans, particularly at that level where these attacks become very personal. If we're going to demand more from our clubs and the industry at large, we must also demand more from ourselves. David's journey also reveals another key juncture in a player's career where they're susceptible to mental health struggles, which is the academy. We've discussed how impactful the injury and retirement can be on a player's mental well-being, and to round off this video, we're going to take a look at something more intangible: rejection. There are 500 to 600 young boys that are released from the academy system each year before turning 16, and even the ones who are kept on face a mountain to climb. 5 out of 6 players who make it to the elite scholarship phase between 16 and 18 aren't playing football by the age of 21. Dr. David Blacklock of Teesside University found, in a study he carried out in 2015, that 55% of players who dropped out suffered clinical levels of psychological distress just 21 days after being released. A worrying statistic for young men who have been geared towards one goal their entire life. The Premier League and the Football League have strongly defended the professionalism of their youth processes, coaching and facilities, which have improved markedly since the introduction of the 2012 Elite Player Performance Plan. This doctrine included scrapping the Reserve League and introducing the Under-21 League, which is now national, not regional as before, with access to much better facilities. Both leagues also stress that boys who are taken on for the 16 to 18 scholarship must continue with education. Commonly, this is a BTEC sports diploma, and receive a broad range of welfare provision and courses in life skills, including emotional well-being. However, some entrepreneurial individuals within the game clearly feel like this isn't enough. Take Exeter City striker Robbie Simpson, who started LAPS, Life After Professional Sport, in 2017, which aims to get footballers into meaningful work when football is no longer an option. During a 2017 interview with The Guardian, the Loughborough graduate breaks down the mindset of professionals in a really interesting way, stating, "In professional football, people don't want to show any fear or even talk about what will happen next after their careers are over. I was lucky in that I had a degree at least. What about people who have left school at 16 with no qualifications to dedicate themselves to football?" Simpson has cited rugby side Saracens as an inspiration, who run day visits to trading room floors in the city to give players a taste for something else. This creative thinking needs to be encouraged across football. So, what's next? Clearly, mental health has many faces and is a complex and deep-seated issue in football. The objective here was to develop a fundamental understanding of the basics and identify key areas for improvement, so we as the fans can help build the momentum that secures meaningful change. To recap, these include rejection at youth level, retirement and injury, clearly areas that clubs, particularly in the Premier League, can have a great effect on. As proactive fans, we should be holding our clubs to account and ensuring we keep the mental health conversation at the forefront by supporting those that speak out. So guys, something a little bit different for you there. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts on mental health in football in the comments below. And if you like this video, go check out other one-on-ones from the series, and I'll catch you next time.